He said you were still in Vancouver, my brother said, staring at me through the crack of my own front door. He did not step back. He did not look surprised. He just stood there with his hand resting on a brand new deadbolt that had absolutely no business being on my door. Behind him, I could see his wife sprawled across my sectional couch, feet up on the armrest, watching something on my television with the volume turned all the way up. Daniel needed somewhere stable, he said. Like that single sentence explained the new lock, the strange shoes in my hallway, and the smell of someone else's cooking coming from my kitchen. You have the space. He's your nephew. I had been gone for 11 days. I was in Vancouver for a work contract that ran short. I came home 2 days early, tired, carrying a bag of Tim Hortons, because I had been thinking about my own couch and my own quiet since the moment I boarded the plane. Instead, I was standing outside my own front door in Mississauga while my brother treated me like an inconvenient visitor. Open the door, I said. My voice was flat. I was not asking. My brother, who has always mistaken my patience for weakness, opened it another 2 inches and leaned against the frame. He did not look guilty. He looked inconvenienced, the way he always looks when reality interrupts whatever version of events he has constructed for himself. Keep your voice down, he said. The kids just went to sleep in the back room. The kids. Plural. In my back room. Those are my guest rooms, I said. He exhaled through his nose, the long-suffering sigh of a man who believes he is always the most reasonable person in any conversation. Look, his wife called from the couch without turning around, not even bothering to pause whatever she was watching. Daniel lost the apartment. The landlord wouldn't renew. We had nowhere to go, and your brother knew you were away, so we figured we would get settled before you got back. It is not a big deal. It is absolutely a big deal, I said. My brother stepped out onto the landing and pulled the door mostly shut behind him. He crossed his arms. You have a 3-bedroom place, he said, all by yourself. That is excessive. You do not even use the second floor half the time. His wife is here, the kids are here, they need stability. You are gone half the month anyway for work. He said it the way people say things they have been rehearsing. Calm, logical, pre-justified. We figured once you saw how it was all set up, you would understand it makes more sense this way. This way, I repeated. You mean the way where you used the spare key I gave you for emergencies to move another family into my house? Your nephew is 4 years old, he said. And his voice dropped into that particular register he uses when he wants to make me feel like a monster. He has been through enough. They all have. His wife left her job to take care of him full-time. Daniel lost work at the site 6 weeks ago. These are real problems. Not everyone gets handed a corporate salary and a remote work setup. There it was. The real sentence underneath all the other sentences. The implication that I had not earned anything. That my stability was some kind of luck he was simply redistributing. I need a minute, I said. He nodded like that was a concession. Good, he said. Come in, eat something. We made pasta. He went back inside. The deadbolt clicked behind him. I stood on my own landing and looked at the parking lot below and understood something I had been refusing to understand for a long time. My brother does not ask for help. He manufactures situations where saying no becomes the cruelest possible option. He had brought a child and a tired woman into my home because he knew I would not throw them out in the dark. He had registered this as clever. He had no idea it was a mistake. I walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time. I am a project coordinator for a construction management firm. I have spent 6 years learning how to read contracts the way other people read menus. Quickly, knowing exactly what you are looking for. Knowing what to order and what to send back. I know what makes an agreement enforceable. I know what makes one collapse. And I know that the biggest mistake people make in any negotiation is letting the other side believe they have already won. My brother thought he had won because he was inside, and I was outside. He thought the children in the guest rooms were checkmate. He had forgotten that I have never, not once in my professional life, walked into a difficult situation without knowing exactly how I was going to walk out of it. I drove to the Marriott on her Ontario. I got a room. I ordered room service. And I opened my laptop. I want to be honest about something. When I sat in that hotel room and started drafting what I was going to do, I was not entirely calm. My hands were shaking a little. Not from anger, exactly. From something older than anger. From the specific grief of realizing that your family has been performing love at you for years while quietly calculating your value as a resource. I grew up understanding that my brother was the one who needed things. He needed help with rent in his 20s. He needed my parents to co-sign on a car he totaled. He needed someone to watch his son for 2 weeks when his wife went to visit her family out west. He needed, and the family gave, and I watched, and I thought I was exempt from the dynamic because I was quiet and functional, and never asked for much myself. I was not exempt. I was just in reserve. I was the emergency fund they had been saving for a sufficiently large emergency. Sitting in that hotel room with the city lights reflecting off the window, I finally understood it clearly. My success was not something my brother respected. It was something he resented and intended to use. My savings, my space, my stability, none of it was mine in his mind. It was shared property, he simply had not collected yet. I opened a new document and started writing. The next morning I drove back to my place. I knocked. My brother's wife answered, holding a coffee mug that I recognized as one from the back of my cabinet, the one I only bring out for guests. And she looked at me with the particular expression of someone who has decided to be gracious in a situation they believe they have already resolved. I told her I needed to speak with both of them. We sat at my kitchen table. My kitchen table, which now had a coloring book and a plastic dinosaur on it. My brother had his arms crossed before I even sat down. His wife looked cautious. She has always been the smarter of the two. I have been thinking about this, I said, and I think you are right that I have more space than I am using right now. And I think it is true that Daniel and the kids need somewhere stable. So I want to make this work, but I need to do it properly. My brother's posture shifted. Relief, immediately. He had been expecting a fight. If your family is going to stay here, I said, I need to do it as a formal arrangement. My home insurance has liability clauses. If anything happens to the kids on the property, and there is no documented agreement about their being here, I could be exposed. I need to protect myself too. His wife nodded. That makes sense, she said carefully. So here is what I am proposing, I said. I can bring Daniel on as a property caretaker. It is a legitimate arrangement. I travel for work regularly. Having someone here to manage the property actually makes sense for me. I can structure it through my personal services account. He gets a modest stipend, you get the rooms, and importantly, he and the kids would qualify to be added to my extended benefits plan through my firm's family coverage option. I watched his wife's eyes change. Dental? She asked. Full coverage, I said. Vision, prescription, dental, the whole package. My employer plan has a dependent add-on provision. As long as there is a documented employment relationship, they qualify. This was, I want to be clear, not entirely a lie. The plan does exist. The dependent provision does exist. What I did not mention was that the employment relationship I was about to create was also a legal instrument that would determine exactly what rights, if any, they had to remain in my home. My brother leaned forward. What does he have to do? Basic property management, I said. Weekly walkthrough, note any maintenance issues, coordinate with me remotely, 10 hours a week on paper. I just need the documentation to exist for insurance and tax purposes. That sounds really generous, his wife said. She was still cautious. She is not a foolish woman, but she was also exhausted, and she had a 4-year-old, and the dental coverage had done exactly what I needed it to do. I pulled out my laptop and said I had a template to work from. I excused myself to the second bedroom, which smelled like someone else's fabric softener, and had a child's backpack on the floor next to my storage boxes, and I spent 40 minutes drafting the actual document. I was not writing a lease. A lease, in Ontario, would have given them tenant protections under the Residential Tenancies Act. It would have meant formal eviction proceedings, a hearing at the landlord and tenant board, months of process. I have sat in on enough construction contract disputes to know that the shape of an agreement determines everything that happens inside it. I was writing a service agreement, a caretaker contract. The housing component was explicitly structured as a condition of employment, not a tenancy. Accommodation provided in conjunction with duties performed. Not rent. Not a lease. A workplace benefit attached to a defined role. I buried the operational clauses in the middle section, where people stop reading carefully. Clause 5b. Accommodation is provided solely as a condition of active service, and does not constitute a tenancy, or create any rights under the Residential Tenancies Act of Ontario. Clause 8c. Termination of the service arrangement, for any reason, results in immediate cessation of accommodation rights. Occupant agrees to vacate within 48 hours of written notice of termination. Clause 11. Service provider consents to property monitoring via security system in all common areas for asset protection and insurance compliance purposes. Clause 14. Service provider authorizes a background and credit check as required for insurance bonding eligibility. That last clause was the one I actually needed. Not for insurance. For information. I printed the document on my wireless printer, which was still connected to my home network, and which no one had thought to touch, and I walked back to the kitchen table. Here, I said, setting the pages down. Standard stuff. The benefit enrollment forms are separate. Once this is signed, I can submit those Monday. My brother picked it up. He flipped through it the way people flip through terms and conditions before clicking accept. His wife read more carefully. She paused twice. But the dental coverage was doing a lot of work in that room, and her son had a checkup she had been putting off for 2 months, and my brother was already reaching for the pen I had set on the table. Does this mean we are official? His wife asked. It means everything is documented and above board, I said, which protects all of us. She looked at my brother. He shrugged with the confidence of a man who has never read a contract carefully in his life. She picked up the pen. They both signed. I signed. I dated it. I collected the copy, folded it into my bag, and told them I had to go back to the hotel to check out and collect my things. I would be back later, I said. I would take the second bedroom for the time being while we figured out the longer-term arrangement. My brother nodded, satisfied. His wife smiled, cautious but warming. I'm going to make dinner, she said. I have a lasagna recipe from my mom. You can eat with us tonight. That sounds lovely, I said. I walked out the front door. I drove back to the Marriott. I ordered a coffee from the lobby and sat in an armchair and opened the background check portal I had already set up under Clause 14. The report came back in 40 minutes. I read it twice. 3 addresses in 4 years. 1 formal eviction judgment in Hamilton from 2022, just under $9,000 in unpaid rent and damages. A second eviction filing in Brampton, withdrawn when they vacated before the hearing date. Credit score in the low 400s. And an active collections file, currently with a firm called Hartley & Associates, for $11,000 and change in combined consumer debt. I set down my coffee. I had assumed my brother was in a bad situation. I had not fully understood that the bad situation was partially engineered. You do not end up with 2 near evictions and an active collections file through bad luck alone. You end up there through a consistent pattern of running up obligations and then moving before they catch up with you. They had not moved into my house because they had nowhere to go. They had moved into my house because my house was somewhere the collections file did not yet know to look. I went back to my room and I sat with that for a while. The specific quality of betrayal that comes from realizing someone used your goodwill as a hiding place. Then I opened my laptop and I got back to work. I had already set up the security cameras before I left for Vancouver. I had installed them 3 months earlier, after a package was stolen from my lobby, and they covered the kitchen, the living room, and the main hallway. The caretaker agreement they had signed authorized monitoring in all common areas for asset protection purposes. They had signed it without asking what that meant. I opened the app. The feed was clear and quiet. His wife was in the kitchen. My nephew was asleep on the couch. My brother was on his phone in the living room, feet on my coffee table. I watched for a while, not out of enjoyment, out of information gathering. That evening, after I had checked out of the hotel and returned to my own home with my bag, I sat at the kitchen table and ate lasagna with my brother's family. It was actually a good lasagna. I said so. His wife looked genuinely pleased. My nephew showed me a drawing he had done of a dinosaur in a house, and I told him it was very detailed. And he told me seriously that the dinosaur was protecting the house, and I said that made a lot of sense. My brother was relaxed in a way I had not seen him be in years. He thought the hard conversation was over. Over the following 3 days, I documented everything. I was not looking for drama. I was looking for the specific facts I would need. On the first day, I noted the indoor smoking, which violated Clause 6 of the caretaker agreement, and also my building's strata rules, and also basic common sense. On the second day, I noted that my brother had given my parking spot to his wife's vehicle, without asking, which displaced my own car to visitor parking. On the third day, I found, tucked behind a stack of grocery bags in my pantry, a bundle of mail that had been intercepted from my mailbox. 3 envelopes from Hartley & Associates addressed not to me, but to my brother, care of my address. He had already updated his mailing address. He had done it before they moved in. He had planned this. He had planned this before Daniel lost the apartment. He had been setting up the forwarding address while I was still in Vancouver, before I even knew anything was wrong. I sat in my room that night and thought about my brother when we were children. He used to tell me that I was lucky, and that luck had nothing to do with effort. He believed that genuinely. He had organized his entire life around that belief, taking from people who had more because in his mind having more meant you owed it. I thought about calling him in and having a direct conversation. I rehearsed it a few times, then I set it aside. A conversation would give him the opportunity to make promises he did not intend to keep. It would give him time to consult someone, to find out what his actual rights were, to complicate the situation. He had not extended me that courtesy when he moved into my home. I was not obligated to extend it to him. I called Hartley & Associates the next morning. I told them I was calling on a property matter and that I had reason to believe an individual they had an active collections file for was currently residing at my address. I gave them the details. The woman I spoke with was professionally neutral and took very careful notes. Within 24 hours, a process server appeared at my door. I was in the kitchen when it happened. My brother answered the door because he had gotten comfortable answering my door. I heard him say his own name, in a voice that had gone very flat. I heard the door close. I came out of the kitchen, and found him standing in the hallway holding a legal envelope, and his face had the expression of someone who has just run out of road. "You knew," he said, like. I looked at him. I did not say anything right away. "You did this," he said. His voice was rising. "You set this up." "I set up a caretaker agreement," I said. "Which you signed, which you read, or had the opportunity to read, and which documented your presence at this address in a way that is now part of the public record." His wife appeared at the top of the stairs. She looked at the envelope. She looked at my face. She understood faster than he did. "How long do we have?" she asked. Her voice was quiet and controlled, and I respected her for it. 48 hours, I said. Per Clause 8C. "I can give you until Friday morning." She nodded. She went back upstairs. I heard her start to move things. My brother stood in the hallway for another full minute. I want to be honest about what that was like. It was not satisfying in the way I thought it might be. It was just heavy. He is my brother. He has been making bad choices and pulling people into the wreckage for 20 years, and I have spent 20 years watching it happen, and standing there watching him hold that envelope. I mostly just felt tired. That is not a story people want to hear, I know. People want the sharp, clean feeling of justice, and there was some of that, but there was also just the specific exhaustion of someone who spent years believing they were exempt from a pattern and then discovered, quite late, that no one is exempt. "Get some sleep," I said. "Friday morning. I will help you load the car if you need it." He did not answer. He went upstairs. By Thursday evening, they were mostly packed. My nephew found me in the kitchen that night, while his parents were moving boxes, and asked me if the dinosaur could stay to protect the house even after they left. I told him of course it could. I put it on the windowsill above the sink where he had suggested it should go. Friday morning they were gone by 9. His wife said goodbye. She did not apologize, exactly, but she looked at me in a way that I think was as close as she could get. My brother did not say goodbye. He carried boxes to the truck, and he did not look at me. I went back inside. I stood in my kitchen in the quiet. I made coffee. I opened the window above the sink and looked at the dinosaur on the sill. I called a cleaning service. I changed all the codes. I forwarded the Hartley and Associates correspondence to my brother's new address, which I had gotten from the process server's filing. I sat on my couch, and I thought about what I had learned. My brother will tell this story as a betrayal. He will say I set a trap. He will say I used legal tricks against family. And I suppose all of that is technically true. What he will not say, because he has never once in his life said it, is that he walked into my home without permission, moved in without asking, hid from a legal obligation using my address, and told himself the entire time that this was reasonable, that I owed him this. That my having more meant he was entitled to take. The most expensive lesson I ever learned is the one I keep having to relearn. Generosity offered without boundaries is not generosity. It is an invitation. And some people will always RSVP, yes. I texted my parents that evening. I told them what had happened. I told them clearly and without drama what my brother had done. The 2 eviction judgments, the collections file, the intercepted mail, all of it. My father called me back within the hour. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said that he had not known about the evictions, that he thought they had just needed a soft landing. I believe him. My father is not a complicated man. He wanted to help his son and he used the only tool he thought he had, which was me. I told him I understood that. I also told him that the next time someone used the spare key I had given him, I would be changing the locks and not replacing the spare. He said that was fair. That is the thing about boundaries. They are not punishments. They are just descriptions of what is true. I am someone who will help when I can. I am not someone who can be moved into. I am not a backup plan. I am not a resource to be accessed without asking. I am a person who lives in her own home, on her own terms, with a small plastic dinosaur on the kitchen windowsill that is doing an excellent job of keeping watch. My brother's collections case is still active. The process server confirmed he was reached. Whatever happens from here is between him and Hartley and Associates, and I genuinely hope he handles it better than he has handled everything else. I am not holding my breath, but I am sleeping well, in my own bedroom, in my own house, for the first time in almost 2 weeks. And that, it turns out, is enough.